Great, thanks. Hello and welcome to the Milford Finance Committee meeting, Wednesday, February 8th, 2017. First item on the agenda, the approval of the minutes for January 11th, 17.
Moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Second item on the agenda, the Finance Director. Obviously, we're in budget time, guys, so I wanted to have Zach come in and Paul, obviously, with some preliminary budget forecast. For the record, I had already met with Zach, Mr. Villani, and Chairman Buckley regarding this, and then it was followed up by an executive session meeting that we had, not executive session, excuse me, an executive committee and budget committee meeting that we had, when was that, Monday night? Last week? Thank you. So we had some discussion there, and then obviously we wanted to bring it to the full committee so that we can get our directives out. I know department heads have already started working on their budgets, and we need to get that out to them now. So that being said, Zach?
I'm sorry, where did you?
FY18,
Yep, FY18.
Is that the recap?
Yes.
Yes, yep. Good?
Yep.
All right. So this is in the typical format we're all used to seeing. I won't go into crazy detail on it. However, I did want to highlight some of the goals and objectives that Chairman Moran had indicated we talked about. And I wanted to share them with everyone tonight and just go over a couple pointers of what we're looking at. I worked with Mr. Abadanza here to put this together. Again, at this time, this is very preliminary, and our objective here was to put together a balanced budget to move forward with town meeting. There is no free cash associated with this, as in the past we don't do that at this time, as I don't know what it's going to be. Theoretically, it could be zero. Unlikely, but that could be the case. So as of now, we move forward assuming that we don't have free cash once 6:30 comes and goes. Just for the record, right now, we do, if you're looking at your green sheets there, I highlight what we do have available for free cash right now, which is 1.8 million. Some of the goals we're looking to achieve, and we talked about this at the last town meeting, before the last town meeting as well, is to clear whatever snow and ice deficit we may incur. We're currently not deficit at this time. However, we're all aware of the snowstorm that's coming tomorrow that I'm sure will put a little bit of a cramp in that budget there. So I do anticipate we will go into deficit status. Further, for the record, with the Modernization Act passing, you will no longer see a memo from me seeking permission to deficit spend. However, out of good practice, I will notify you guys that we are at that state. Currently, it's just going to take a vote of the Board of Selectmen, and I will notify them as well. I anticipate that's probably right around the corner, although we don't know what type of weather is going to be coming, but it doesn't look too bad right now, so hopefully we're not in a position where we're going to have to deplete 1.8 million.
7 more weeks.
There you go. Yeah, so.
Don't listen to the ground.
Why, did Uncle Jack see his shadow?
So, my opinion, that should be our #1 objective. When we get to the annual town meeting, I'm hoping, as in the past, this committee here will sponsor that article. We know town meeting was opened as of Monday, and it's going to close relatively quickly. So, just communicate with me. I'll happily put that in if you'd like on your behalf. We know there's a couple things that might be coming down the line as far as capital for the annual, but we've done a lot with capital over this past year, and everyone's certainly respecting the fact that we're going to be saving that for the October meeting. So again, I don't anticipate too much there. So we should be able to take care of business with snow and ice deficit, and we'll take it from there. But so we do that purposely so that we can keep our eyes on the operational budget, by and far the largest component of the tax recap. And you can see here, again, in the typical format that has been provided in the past, the left-hand column is our revenues. Top left-hand, biggest component, is the levy, highly predictable because of Prop 2.5. Just a quick reminder, I think it's very, very important that it's clear, everyone understands that the starting point of the levy is always what it could have been, not what it was, and I think that's very important. For the bottom right-hand side, what we have is one of the goals of FY18 levy adjustment of $3 million, so just make sure we understand that correlation between the two. Currently, the state had put out the preliminary budget, and Paul had provided that number there, along with what we know is going to be the current offsets, which we know could change and most likely will change as we go through the various levels there. We also, looking at local receipts, pretty consistent there. We've made proper adjustments to the larger ones, such as motor vehicle excise and room occupancy. But again, this is attempting to portray what we anticipate will most likely happen. Again, trying to create a balanced budget for town meeting. And as you know, this will probably change as we seek into October. There's a lot of things out there right now that could potentially determine a different path, but for now, this is what we're thinking is important. Just to kind of flow through the bottom, sewer receipts matches exactly what the budget will be on the other side. That's hand to hand right there for the enterprise fund. And we put together this budget based on past trend analysis, what we anticipate most likely will be the final budget. There's some exact numbers in there, such as debt services and retirement. And right now, employee benefits actually look pretty good. Health insurance looks like it's going to be pretty favorable, around possible 6%. Crazy to say that's favorable, but in comparison to prior years and what could be happening, it is pretty good. Yeah, not bad. It could, yes. I also, if everyone recalls, we reduced that budget last year by close to $1 million, and the way it's trending now is much closer, which most will absolutely have an impact on what free cash would be too. But it's also, when we did that, I was slightly nervous that it could be a situation where we went a little too extreme, and I do not think that's the case. I think we will be completely fine there as well with the health insurance at the end of this year. So basically, in my opinion, we can simply apply a 6% there and should be in pretty good shape. The other thing we're looking to do with that account is break out the OPEB with a pay-as-you-go for retirees. And one thing I'm looking at pretty heavily right now, working with Treasurer Chris Pillar and Benefits Coordinator Kelly Capisi, is the OPEB account that we have in the trust fund, and trying to develop a long-term plan where we can actually utilize that. So once we get to a certain threshold, I'm thinking probably $10 million, I'd like to start transitioning retirees that are retiring at that point out of this trust account that we're setting up. Right now, and I've made it no secret that I'm not the hugest fan of OPEB, but it is a reality. It is here, and I think doing something like that will optimize our solution for it. And I think by breaking it out this year as a budget line item, we'll be able to study it and see it more clear than ever. So that's kind of some of the things we're thinking about with the budget on that side. And the big items on the bottom right, so we want to continue to tuck away $500,000 to stabilization. One thing I'm looking at heavily right now is the overlay. I say that because, again, a result of the Modernization Act was to eliminate multiple year overlays. We probably have literally 25 years on the books, and the directive from the state was to combine them all into 1 year, and didn't really see the full picture through because we do have an aggregate balance. I am thinking that this may not even be necessary this year because of how much of a balance we have once we combine them all. Now, that's important for multiple reasons. One, that if we eliminate that, it will drop to that bottom line of surplus, for one. And two, in my opinion, that might be a 1 or 2 year deal, and then we're back to having to budget for that. So I want to make sure that that doesn't get overlooked and that we don't get caught a couple of years from now with our pants down on that one. So I'm still studying that. I'm still trying, and so isn't the state. The state recognizes it's an issue. Speaking with our auditors and part of my association, we anticipate that there will be an IGR that'll come out, and it will kind of hopefully give us some further guidance. But just be aware that that is something we really need to take a look at. And further, I think that this is going to be more of a special town meeting item in October. So plenty of time to look at it in the positive direction this year, but just want to be aware, make everyone aware that let's make sure that we don't have that be absorbed in the upper operational budget, and then when we come back to having to budget for that we can't. So that's just something to be aware of, and I'll talk more about that as we go through the year. Assessments, that's the other side of the cherry sheet. Paul, is that the figure that came out last?
Yeah,
Right, correct.
Two of the key components are listed on the very bottom to the left.
Yep, so school choice, 1.2, and charter, 175. And usually there's other immaterial items on there, mosquito control, whatnot. Right now, we earmark capital projects at 1.5 million on the raise and appropriate side, and we have a final levy adjustment at the bottom of 3 million. I want to make it clear that we're not suggesting that this would be an actual sponsored article. In fact, it wouldn't be, because in fact, it'd have to come out of free cash. So this is saying, meeting our goals, our objectives, looking at a budget to this nature, I believe we will still have a surplus, which ultimately translates into us keeping taxes below 2.5%. Those are some of the highlights. We went over what our free cash levels are going to be. I put together this sheet again when we talked, just to kind of show some of the other things we should be looking at. As we move through the year, if we do in fact have decent free cash levels, I think one thing we're going to have to do is potentially refund the compensated absences special revenue fund. That's starting to dip down a little bit, and I think probably $100,000 there. One big item we're looking at right now, and I'm pretty sure this committee is behind, is continuing to take a look at what we have for callable bonds. Now, that's coming up this year, and it's pretty significant, and in my opinion, this is going to be a real big turning point for us. The way they were done, there was quite a few bonds that were all done at the same time. I believe there's 10 of them. So the treasurer and myself will be speaking with our bond counsel, and what we'd like to do is kind of get really in depth. We invited Paul Abadanza as well, get really in depth here and kind of see what our options are, which could be simply refunding, which basically is refinancing. It could be that we refund and pay off some, which I'm kind of leaning towards, and or it could be that we say we don't want to do it right now, which I would like to. So that will be coming down the line. I'd probably ask the chairman to put that on as a single agenda item itself, and we will definitely come before the board and discuss it. Again, I believe that this will be something that'll happen most likely for the special town meeting. That's what I got for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Zach. I know it's a ton of work to put this together between you and Paul and your whole team. And you know, when you talk about numbers like, you know, $106 million, I mean, we're talking about some big numbers here with these budgets. And I don't want to get too much into the minutia of the budgets, but does anyone have any points? And also, I know he mentioned it, a lot of the assumptions are in the bottom left-hand corner. I know Paul had mentioned it earlier, so the things on health insurance and the assessments and all that kind of stuff. All these assumptions that were made on this are in the bottom left-hand corner, so you can kind of see where he came up with the numbers on that. And then the growth, just to give everyone an idea on room occupancy was 1%.
Yep.
Okay, and local receipts was what was that?
No, pretty much flat.
Was it flat?
Room occupancy ultimately is a part of local receipts, but we have it presented separately.
So on the revenue side, yep.
Yeah.
And obviously from the cherry sheet proposal, that's from the latest numbers we have from the state.
Correct.
Which is just the governor's budget
Correct.
at this point.
Correct.
So, with that being said, yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
through you, Zach, debt service, what's the real number? We have 3.5 in the operational budget, and there's 4 for the school. So what's
For
the
Woodland?
impact on the operational budget, if anything?
Well, remember, the current year we're in right now, FY17 had the first year of the Woodland impact, so the overall debt service excluding the sewer is at 5.4 million, which would be FY18. But that's also inclusive of geriatric, which has 4 loan bonds with us right now. I didn't bring that sheet with me, so I can't give you an exact number, but I'd say a little over 4 million.
Including the school debt?
Yep,
I thought the school debt payment was 4 million.
2.8.
Okay.
You know, 1.4 for principal.
Yeah, because when we initially did our numbers, you're 100% right, when we had looked at the interest rate
Yeah,
and the
2.4.
payment that we were
And we
looking at.
reduced the bond. as
Because
well.
we reduced the bonding and we got the better rate. No, you're 100% on it,
Did
what it was.
really, really good with it.
Yeah.
We really did.
I would like next, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see the debt schedule.
Sure, we could definitely do that.
Debt
Yep.
schedule?
Yeah, we do.
Um,
Yep. As remember, we paid off 2 of them too.
Right, you paid
Yeah,
off a
so-
bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I'd
that
like to
fell
see
off
what
too.
that is. That'll help us make a decision on the bonds.
Definitely. And like I said, I definitely want to have treasurer with me and we'll give a full thorough presentation with it.
All right. You mentioned OPEB as a line item. It is a line item in the budget, isn't it?
Well,
I thought it was.
all right, so yes, contributing to the OPEB fund is definitely a line item, but what I'm suggesting, so that's just contributing to our liability. I'm also saying that we do pay as we go, which is one of the reasons I think that this whole OPEB thing is silly, because they're saying you gotta tuck away to pay people, and I'm saying we do, you know? So there's the component of funding our liability, which is what you're referring to of the 600,000, but we also pay directly to the providers as well, and that's what I'm suggesting we break out. Correct.
So the direct,
Self-insured?
We're not self-insured, no, but we still have to pay those
direct
premiums.
payments just keep OPEB from getting worse.
That would be the theory.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically, we're paying as we go, so we're not making it worse.
Oh, correct, yes,
And we're trying to nibble down by the line item.
That would be the
correct,
theory.
yes.
So we're doing better than a lot, but we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, we're in comparison.
Very good shape.
Very aggressive, but it's still, and it's not mandated, keep that in mind. So most communities that are having difficulty with Prop 2.5 are just saying we can't do it, not mandated, not doing it. But when I go back to saying it is in fact a reality, when we go to bond, when we go to look at all of this, that it is very, very high priority for them. They do look, what they're looking for, do you have a trust? Yes. What's your liability? X. And where are you? You know, so by us tucking away 600,000, it's kind of a drop in the bucket, but it is significantly
A lot of
better.
drops add up.
Yep.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Right now, we're close to 4 million.
Um,
And what I'm further getting at, once we hit, I would like to see us actually make this useful rather than a balance sheet item, which it currently is. That's it. We got a liability and we have a trust. That's it. So what I'm getting at is once we reach a certain threshold, I would like to say, pay-as-you-go amount that we're now gonna see in budget, we're gonna take that along with the 600, go direct to this fund and pay retirees from the fund. That's what I think would the proper way to do this would be.
We can also lend money to some of those towns that need.
Yeah.
The other thing I had, 2 other things I had. One, you know that the school department released middle school east as of July 1 to surplus. We have to add money in our budget, in some budget, to figure out what we're gonna
Correct.
do with that building in the short term and in the long term.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, you know, I think we need to sit down with the selectmen and powers that be and decide what we're gonna do with that building. Some of the recommendation, I mean, I've talked to a couple of other real estate guys, and the recommendation is we put out an offer to bid and see what we get, okay? And, you know, even if it costs us, even if we sell it for $1, if they're gonna develop it, and it'll go back on the tax
Put it
rate.
on the tax roll, yep,
Tax roll.
that's right.
So we need to, I think we need to move on that before we winterize the building again, board it up, and end up with pigeons in there. So that's something we
agree.
need to look at, and where we're gonna put that 300,000 or whatever the number wants to be.
I think it is 300,000.
Yeah, well, that number was when it was fully
Yeah,
operational.
it's fully
Yeah.
occupied, so I don't know what the,
Pretty sure we did 40K when we did it this last go around with the school, but I definitely plan on really digging into that as well. And right now, I'm kind of leaning towards an article, but you said the most important part. We need to determine what we're going to do. And then I think that'll fall into place what we decide to do, whether we put it in the budget or we decide let's put it in an article, because we're really going to not hold on to this long. But need one step at a time, I agree. It's important.
And the last thing is one of my pet peeves, and I'll bring it up and you can yell at me, whatever, but I have a real problem with $3 million levy adjustment. I had it last year, I have it this year. I think we're approaching a number that is not sustainable. And I would love to make it go back to 2 million and see what else, how it falls into place. But
Right.
my opinion.
I got you. I understand. I understood your concern last year too. My point right now is this works. This is a balanced budget. This is preliminary. As we roll into October, things may change and that number may change, but as of right now, I feel this is appropriate and it is doable this year.
I'm just putting it on the table, so I don't. we don't
Absolutely,
forget
Mark.
about it.
It's a,
I have no issue at all leaving it there as a placeholder.
Yeah, I don't either. I just
So
want
we
to make
can
sure that we
revisit
can
it to say,
talk about it.
absolutely.
Some of that money, I know I would advocate for paying some of the old debt off,
Yep.
not leaving it on the table total.
Yep.
I agree.
And everyone's points, and it's been brought up to me, certainly that isn't the first time that's been brought up to me, and I know it hasn't been to Zach, and everyone is open to that. But right now, as Zach mentions, I mean, with the $3 million in there, this works. And right now, we only have a surplus of 0.3% after it's all said and done. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room there, but we do have the wiggle room in the $3 million for
Well said.
for the bond rate and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where, like I said, without it there, you know, it leaves us open to a lot of possibilities, whether it's bonding, whether it's other things, whether capital needed to go up a little bit more than 1.5, whatever.
No argument,
So,
I just-
yep, no, it's
Should be out there.
We
a-
haven't discussed the number yet,
it's,
so it's no
it's,
need
it's a
to.
very good point, so,
Yep.
and,
Mr. Chairman.
yep.
So, one of the main points, and I kind of jumped over it because I was going so far into this, of me being here tonight, is we do got to get going with the budgets. We do have to put a directive out. Town accountant Wendell Phillips did an awesome job of putting the budget sheets. They're sitting there. They're ready to go. I would like to have a directive put out. I'd like to do it either Friday or Monday, and we have our personal services sheets together. I'd like to get that out sooner rather than later, but as you mentioned earlier, I have had discussions with most departments. I said, you put together your contract services. I think we have one union right now that will expire as of 6/30. However, all the other ones are negotiated. They know what the numbers are. Personal services, around 80% of overall budgets. You know what they are, you know who's stepping, you know who's doing what. Stop building them, and then backfill on the other end with the general expenses, which I'd like to see level funded. And actually, Mike's point when we met, and Jerry, on a couple weeks ago, Rick did negotiate a very favorable electrical national grid contract. And I do, in fact, think that we could pull some money out of some of these electrical budgets, because if you recall, 2 years ago, one of the directives we put out was personal services level fund general expenses, but increase the national grid accounts, as we had a really bad year, and we jumped to like 13, 14 cents per kilowatt. It is not that anymore. So I do believe that those big accounts that do have electricity should be looked at, should be reduced by upwards of 25%. So.
That's a big number.
It
That's
is.
great news.
I think so. Yep.
Change this.
Zach, one quick thing, before you send out all of those reports, because I know that there's, what you do is you take last year's number, you increase it by X percentage, and that's what everybody has on the expense side. For the district, I don't think we should do that. There are a lot of one-time items in the school budget that need to come out before we give an increase.
I agree.
Right, and I can go over some of that with your team whenever you want, because that's really important at this point in time.
Yep, and I agree with you, and I've gone over Mark's done a great job putting together all the numbers on the stuff that shouldn't be followed in snowballing with whatever percentage on top of that.
Right.
And, you know, it starts really to snowball from year to year to year if you don't keep a good eye on it.
Somewhat hand in hand. That's why I mentioned that on the national grid. If your starting point is X, and we know there's a reduction, your starting point's not X. You know.
If you're not keeping a good eye on it. And I know Mark has, so Mark, if you can, I mean, you pretty much have most of the work done, so touch base with Zach on that.
And,
I'll call you tomorrow.
sure.
He may not call you back.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
I'll get back to you next week. Yeah. I'm going to North Conway after this meeting, so.
Yeah, okay.
One final comment, so, we all realize that a lot of these, smaller budgets that, as the result of either Article 2 or some of the unions with step increases, may be a little higher than a 2%. So I'm directing them at this time, and we got no other option. Build your salaries and wages, as I mentioned. Try to absorb it in your general expenses, but if you can't, bring it forward and let's discuss it. So that's kind of.
Absolutely, and I think that's a realistic, I mean.
It is.
When you look at some of these smaller budgets, I mean, you can't hold them too hard, and I think this committee's been committed to,
Very
when
much
you see that case, that, you know, in those particular cases, we
Well, we've
absorb.
always said, if we put out a directive, 1%, 2%, 5%, build your budget.
Yep.
If you can't live with it, go to your subcommittee chair. And then if you get a consensus, or not, but normally you do come to us and say, I can't live with 2 because I have 2 people,
Yep,
and so I need 2.2.
Yep.
yeah,
You know, I mean, whatever it is, but I think if we stay with what's worked in the past, which is, this is what we have to mandate as a baseline.
Correct.
If there's special circumstances, come on down.
Yeah.
it's here.
And we'll deal those, like I said, we'll deal with those later on on a case-by-case basis, but
Awesome.
for what we have here, like I said, I didn't want to get too much into this tonight because of that particular point. So, does anybody else have any questions or issues about anything that Zach has brought up? Is everyone comfortable with him sending out that directive at the 2%? And then, like you said, we'll look at each individual case afterwards and we'll assess it.
The only question I had was about the electric. You said the rate went up to 14, but now it's down?
Correct.
So
Yep.
what's our current rate now?
A little above 9.
Okay, so it's significant
Yeah.
decrease.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's pretty
Is
good.
it based on volume, or is it based on somebody twisting somebody's arm?
It's based on the market, yeah.
14 cents to 9.
Rick twisted hard on that one.
Yeah, good. And he pulled the trigger on, what, 5 years? 4?
Great,
Which was wise.
great
so,
job, great
yeah.
job, Rick.
You think some of the fuel budgets require a second look also?
Yeah, I think all of them do,
I
but,
mean, we,
yeah.
about the time the
Yep,
electricity.
as you guys, as we also saw when we went over them, yeah. I anticipate general government to be very favorable this year. That's what I was yes, mentioning, to looking
I know,
at Jerry's
Jerry
way
seems to be-
here, but,
Don't tip our hand.
See, there you go.
Got another month to go.
yeah.
And one more election, and then once
There you go.
beyond the election, then we'll
Yeah.
be able to tighten things
And
up.
we'll tip the cap.
All right,
yeah.
guys. Does anybody got anything else? Nope. All right. So do we need to vote on him sending the directive out?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a motion to send the directive out at 2%, so.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, the next thing I had for Zach, and I think we did a really good job on this last year. I know Mark was really on top of open articles, and I know a lot of the other people when they're getting money for what they are so-called emergencies, and then you see them, and 6 years later, the money is still in the account, or they've only spent a portion on the account. It makes you question how emergency it was. Well, Zach has put together with Chris and the whole rest of the team about open accounts and what is in there right now, and I'll let him from there on.
Sure. So I just did this right before coming down, because obviously, as we move through the year, expenses come through. So I provided Al with a copy about a month ago, and picture changed a little bit, but I just wanted to throw some facts out there and just kind of go through the process of what we're looking at. So right now, I have 55 open articles. That's significant. Right now, off the top of my head, just looking at it, I'm going to close at least 21 of them. So, and I think it's going to go better. I think we're going to cut out half of these this year, and we're talking some decent money. I think around $200,000.
It's not chump change, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I can sense it's a lot of money, 51, I mean, if
55. Yep.
55, and I'm looking at.
Yep.
And we just closed a whole bunch.
Totaling $2.8 million.
Mr. Chair. Is there a mass general law that says we have to keep these open? Is there
They're on
Is there a
auto,
process that we can change?
they're on auto encumbrance until town meeting closes them, correct? Via my town meeting article,
No, no.
which I do.
I understand that part, but between the time that they're appropriated and voted at town meeting and the time that we go and ask them to be closed, is there some mechanism that says if you don't spend the money within 18 months, we're gonna take it back?
Not to my knowledge, but no.
But can we do that? No. Because?
Because that's the law.
No, you go to town meeting.
Appropriates it, town meeting decides.
No, what
to
I'm,
put it back.
I understand that.
Mechanism in between.
Jerry, I understand that. What I'm saying is, after 18 months, if it's not spent, we go to town meeting and say we're closing it.
But
You can do it anytime we
Good,
want.
yeah.
I think, Jerry, I think the question that Mark was trying to ask, and I'll word it differently, is there a way that we can bring something to town meeting that says, from now on, if you haven't used your money in 3 years,
It automatically.
it goes back? Is that anything that could?
No, I've heard that being talked about, other, communities have talked about that, and I don't believe it's gonna work.
Okay.
I'll check, but.
So we'll just do what we do now and just
Well,
stay
then
on
all you need
top
to
of it?
do- All you need to do is say when you appropriate the money, you tell the department head,
put it
you got 18 months to spend it, otherwise it's coming back.
But once again, that's a verbal commitment from them to do it. It still has to go to town meeting. Okay.
No, and yes, you're right, it's also for town meeting.
I'm uncomfortable with fixed rules. I like what you did this time. You gave us a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I could sort it by date, and obviously now each department head has to talk to the subcommittee saying, okay, Mark, you wanted this, it's been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just but walk through it
Yep.
one, it's
And-
not that many.
And we
You can
did
clean
it,
them
and
up.
and we did it last year, and we had each department come in and say,
Yeah.
exactly, and say, listen, this money's still on the table. Are you doing the project, you're not doing the project? And we returned quite a bit of money when we
did.
did it last year.
We did.
So
And-
I think that what we'll do is, which like what we always done, is just every year, just look at it and,
And ask.
You know what happens though, people, I mean, like, the district, they wanted $100,000 to fix the elevator at Stacy, had to have it last May, they were gonna fix it over the summer. They didn't fix it, money's not spent. So the discussion the other night was, why didn't you spend the money? You wanted it, it was an emergency, you had to have it, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I think there was a parts problem. I said, excuse me? Why would there be a parts problem if you asked for the money and you knew you had to spend it and you already talked to the contractor?
But that was
So
for a new elevator.
yeah,
There
well,
There shouldn't be any parts.
let's,
for a
okay,
new
let's not,
elevator.
Yeah, they
let's
wanted
not,
to replace it,
I-
whatever it
let's
was.
not talk about elevators.
No, but the
Okay.
point being that people,
They push their luck. I agree. I understand what you're saying. So, at this point, I think then it becomes onto the subcommittee to keep in mind that if people have been doing it in the past, you gotta be tough on them.
yeah, it's
Okay?
upfront issue.
Exactly. So, and I think that's just the way we'll handle it.
And to follow up on that, I certainly appreciate that the subcommittees all are checking that out. I think it's smart when you're looking at the budget. Let's go over them as well. It does help me, really does. And again, I anticipate that we're going to cut these in half this year. There are a few old ones that have been hanging around for a while that I have not seen a penny come out of in a long time. So
How
I
old's your
agree.
oldest one?
04. Before the hell.
That's when I knew that there were some old ones.
Why did I ask?
Yeah, Godfrey broke his
It's
arm.
like $4,000. But
So, Zach, I know you sent, I got that. I know, Al, you sent it to Al. Did everyone get that?
I got it.
I'll give a refresher
Can you
because it
do-
has
can you do
changed.
that? So, guys,
what
be
I
on the
put together
lookout.
here looks pretty good and is
Yep.
easily read.
So if you guys can just take a look on that, obviously, any subcommittee chairs, you see any of your committees have issues on there, if you can address it at your next meeting, obviously Zach's gonna be following up as well. Just if there is some reason why, and there's a good argument, obviously we'll leave it there. If there's not a good argument, we're gonna fight to take it back, because, you know,
13
it shouldn't
years
be
is
there.
tough to justify.
Well,
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
yeah,
We've had this discussion in a couple of our meetings, and the discussion went to one of the department heads needs money for a capital improvement. Well, he didn't go to the flooring, and here's another one sitting over here with 25,000, or 25,000, or 30, and we're like, well, what, that money, you're keeping the other department head from getting what they actually need, because you've got it stuffed in your back pocket back here and holding on to it.
couldn't agree with you more, Jerry.
And that's what concerns me the most, because all that money could be used for something that we actually need today.
Yeah, well,
So,
I think, and I think that's why we're doing what we're doing, for that exact reason, Jerry, so.
Mr. Chairman, it's interesting because in federal appropriations, at the Department of Defense, for example, if the government has allocated money and it isn't expended, they sweep it up after a certain period of time, and you also have canceling funds and expiring funds. We should follow that same type of model here. If, to Jerry's point, if you've said, okay, here's money that you need, and you've taken 18 months or whatever and you haven't spent it, then, and the example being in the Department of Defense, the comptroller would take that money back and give it to somebody else that needed
Yeah,
it.
I'd like to do that.
Obviously, you didn't need it, otherwise you would have spent it.
But we already, yeah, exactly. So we had already heard from Jerry that that's the way we need to do it, so.
But I like the new system.
Yep.
For the first time, I could sort, look down, and that's why I pinged you on a bunch of them saying,
Yeah.
you know, what's going on, and I
Yep.
think if we keep circulating that,
I like it.
and, you know, a couple times a year, we keep hitting it that,
Yep.
and we'll just keep cleaning it, because you're never gonna get to zero.
No, never.
No, it's
Well, we have a finance
perpetual,
committee.
but, yeah.
All right, guys, I want to get Zach on vacation, so does anybody else, anything for Zach?
I knew you.
Trust me, we'll be looking at his pay budget. He's taking a lot of
Ice fishing
vacations.
again?
Yes, I am.
Good for you.
Well, hope you have good catches.
Take Winnipesaukee, get a tour guide and everything.
Excellent.
Enjoy the skiing.
Oh,
Yeah,
gee.
well,
Great work, Zach, by
Thank
you and
you.
your department as usual, so thank you very
I'd
much.
say, Zach, and watch out for those police on 16, they're waiting for you, 9 o'clock at night.
All right, next item on the agenda, I wanted to have Jerry in. Jerry's put in, he filled out all the paperwork regarding a fund transfer. What do I got here? Yep, for $50,000 regarding water company litigation, so that's a good speaker talk.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, it is just exactly that, seeking a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $50,000. As you know, the water company, you know, we've been going after this now for a couple of years, 3 years or so. We appropriated money back in 2013, supplemented that back in 2015. We've been spending that on all the consultants we've been using, and Brown Rudnick, the law firm that's backing us up on this, Russell Consulting, Woodward and Curran. And of course now with a, you know, tentative agreement, which we're still working on finalizing, and doing now, ramping up and beginning to do what people refer to as our due diligence, which is pretty extensive in terms of the engineering, the legal end of it, the accounting end of it. So where we were spending the money at a steady rate, now we're spending it very, very fast. And we certainly, there'll be an article, whatever town meeting we go to for possible acquisition, or the annual town meeting, whatever that's going to be, there'll be an article in there to supplement funds so we can pay these experts that we have out there working. But we want to pay them current. And as I said in the memo I gave you, we had 48,000 left, 30,000 of that's already committed to Woodward and Curran. And I'm sure the law firm and the others have already run past the other 18,000. So I just want to be able to pay them current. Come the next town meeting, there'll be a further appropriation, and we could also supplement your reserve fund if that's appropriate at that point in time. But, you know, the statute talks about, you know, extraordinary and unforeseen expenses. Well, acquisition of the water company is pretty extraordinary, and the timing of it is not foreseen. So here we are trying to, again, so we can pay these bills current and keep these people working who are doing a great job for us.
Absolutely. I feel this is a very straightforward, I'll get to you in 1 second, Chair. I think this is a pretty straightforward thing. I think we've been voting on this for going on 2 years now, supplementing this fund. As Jerry says, we already have, of the 48, 30 that's already committed. So that leaves that balance pretty low. So I think that this 50,000 transfer, obviously, in the situation, I think we all know what we're up against right now. It just takes a lot of money to do. And I think they've done a great job, and I know that I've been in a couple of meetings with these guys, and Jerry's been hundreds of hours of meetings with these guys, so I think we need to finish the job with this.
From the
So.
reserve fund?
I just
Yes.
wanna understand the current reserve fund balance is 130?
100.
100.
100,000.
105, I think.
Is it 100? What is it?
Your balance in
Yeah.
those 103.
103, I thought it was 100.
Okay, so
Yep.
this would, if we do this,
50%.
this will leave
Yep.
us with 53,000 left
And I'll be looking to replenish that,
at town meeting.
Yes.
or the next-
Maybe.
Maybe,
yes.
okay.
No.
I would motion the approval of the
End of the
50,000.
fiscal year, we probably
Well,
won't have.
that's, I said
probably
maybe,
won't.
Mark, because we
Well,
may
we'll
not,
see.
come the end
That's
of
fine.
May,
We may not.
we may not need it.
Yeah,
I would vote motion favorable.
okay. I have a motion favorable from Jerry. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Al, any other discussion?
The only question,
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, what the total legal costs that we reached now?
Well, we
The
spent,
original-
the original appropriation was 100,000, we supplemented with 60, so we had 160,000, which we spent on both the legal, the consulting, engineer, Russell Consulting, and Woodward and Curran. So that takes us up to, you know, 18,000 left out of that 160. So But again, now it's really ramping up fast and.
So 210.
It's up
210.
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. So that's what that'll bring us to, right?
right.
But there will be more. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
That's not out of line
No,
with
it's
some of the,
For the
other-
amount of time that this has gone on, the amount of work that's been
what's
done.
No, for a
As a percentage
$63
of the-
million
the
dollar
63
purchase.
some other
It is,
things
it
with-
is money well spent.
You
and-
good?
Are we
Excellent.
gonna roll these expenditures into the total cost of the possible acquisition?
No,
No,
it's outside.
This is
It's
a sunk
outside.
cost.
can't,
Outside.
Sunk cost. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of transferring from our reserve fund 50,000? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, next item on the agenda I have is subcommittee reports. First, one, we'll do them in order, actually, while we have them. Capital?
Well, capital, we're starting down the process, we always do this time of year. We've met with school, and we're working out their critical needs. And every other department over the next 3 or 4 months will be going. For the town meeting, we may, I don't see a lot of things coming forward. School has told us, last fall, we were asked to fund half of a playground, because we had said, we don't normally fund playgrounds, but the playground for Memorial is $120,000. So we told the school that they gotta come up with 60, and when they have $60,000, that they can unconditionally commit to spending, come talk to us and we'll match it. They told us this evening they do have 60. So I'm gonna ask the finance committee, but it's kind of rhetorical, will we live up to our word and fund the 60? So I'm
with a
gonna ask
briefcase
for a
with
motion
20.
that we live up to our word and fund the 60 at.
is that on the capital
May.
side of it?
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna push this,
It's from last year, we reserved money from last fall, because we had given them a commitment that if they came up with 60, we'd do, so it's really last year's
so
money.
we're actually, I hate to use this term, we're actually gonna pull it ahead at this point, because they came to the party with force.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're really not pulling it ahead, because it should have been last
I don't wanna
October,
put words in your
No.
mouth,
but we're pushing
if-
it,
okay,
we're
it's okay.
pushing it.
We're moving forward with it.
In the spring, it comes under special circumstances.
Okay,
It's not an emergency, but it is special, because we committed to them last fall that we would hold 60 grand.
so we had a placeholder for it.
Yes, it's from the
And
money
now we're
we're,
gonna fulfill the
Yep,
placeholder.
and the schools have done a fantastic job. I mean, $60,000, that's a lot of pizza parties and a lot of fundraisers.
That's a hell of a job.
They did a great job, so.
Mr. Chairman, I would, when appropriate, I would ask for a motion that you recommend they put an article.
I'm in favor of that.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Half a playground, 60 grand.
The playground that you had already,
Last year's capital,
Yeah.
or this year's capital budget.
no, I want to hear from Mark. No?
I was told that I committed to that, and my recommendation is let them put up their half first, and if they put up
Yeah.
their half,
Well,
They-
Mark, that's what we said.
they
Tonight,
have-
they told us,
They have their half.
they have their half.
show me the money.
Bring a briefcase with
I don't-
20s and
I'm sorry, show me the money that's not in their budget, that's in the PTA budget or PTO budget, wherever it's supposed to
Mark, you're
be.
the subcommittee chair, but
You gotta take them
I,
at their word.
I'm not gonna ask
You
them
can't- You can't.
to prove their word.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, when we voted on a bridge repair, did we not say we won't put the money in until Upton puts the money in?
Yes,
Yep.
same thing.
Put the money in.
But we didn't go to Upton and say, show me a
Your
wheelbarrow of
bank
cash.
statement.
But we said put the money in.
Well, Mark, maybe I'm not clear, I
We-
apologize. They told us tonight, they have the money put aside, 60 grand for this. Now, you can look at it and find out where it is.
I will vote favorable on it, but I reserve the option.
Right, the source of the other half of this funding was supposed to be from the PTO, right?
We told them, I don't care where they
Yeah.
get it.
No, that's what they told us.
Yes, they're doing it, it's from the.
That's
But if
what
they have to
told us.
supplement it out of their budget, that's up to them.
So if the project's
No.
No, it's
no.
not.
That's,
Okay.
that's unacceptable.
Al, that budget is to educate the
Table
children,
this for the next meeting.
not to
I'm
build
gonna table this for
playgrounds.
the next meeting.
Okay, then,
We're gonna table this, and we're gonna talk about it the next
Good idea.
meeting. I don't wanna get into this about a playground and show me the money.
well, the other thing
I
that came,
agree.
PTO should come with a check.
I agree, but I think they also still have fundraisers that are still going on. It's anticipated, so why don't we table this next meeting, we'll have, more conversation.
the other thing that came up is the whole Chromebook initiative. and we're working through details. Sent it back to the subcommittee to how we can deal with the Chromebooks, because we had it in the plan for next fall. They have brought up a question of, is it possible to move it forward? That way the children who are working with Chromebooks in Woodland and going to Stacy wouldn't have a year of going to stone tablets like they are now. So the question came up, okay, if we move it forward, we would need your word that you're not gonna ask for a penny in the fall. Because the 1.5 million that Zach said is in the budget really becomes 900,000 that we would have next year to spend. So again, that's going back to subcommittee to talk to you.
Yep.
But the idea would be, they're asking, under special circumstances, so the kids don't lapse a year. Because even if we gave it to them in October, I mean, Aldo, you know better than all, but by the time they put it in, you're gonna ask teachers to change their lesson
Yeah.
plans
Now,
in the middle of the year. That won't work.
I just wanted, before Al gets done giving the update, I think it's important that that has not gone before the school subcommittee. So we've already talked about, just because it goes to Al's committee does not mean that it's gonna stay on Al's committee. So, and I think that's an important point. I promised you,
And we've started
and that's
talking
it.
about it.
I know.
Yeah. And we went
So-
through it to say, anything we're talking about, we want packages, but until, one, it goes through subcommittee, and then this committee. Because we were clear to say, even if the subcommittee says they want to or they don't, the subcommittee has less power than the full committee, which has no power except to recommend to town meeting. So it was very clear, we went through it, so everybody understands, we can think it's a good idea, and kick it back to Mark and his subcommittee, they can think it's a good idea, all of us can think it's a good idea, but it's still not guaranteeing anything.
Yep.
That's it, and we'll
I didn't mean to cut you
continue.
off like that,
No,
but I
no,
just
no, but
didn't
it's
want it to
legit.
get into a conversation. Okay.
It's legit.
All right, transportation, Mike, if you can just give us a quick, I'm gonna ask every meeting, so. and
Yeah.
You're always prepared for it, which I appreciate.
So January, we saw another increase in ridership. We were at 992 in January for rides. Compared to December, it was 900. So we went from a 45 a day average, or excuse me, a 43 a day average to a 45 a day average. Just to give you guys some historical data, obviously we started the last week of August, so that 1 week we had 44 riders. The whole month of September, we had 414, and the whole month of October, we had 599. So,
So we're on upward glide path.
Period
Well, that's
of time
when-
is that, Mr. Chairman?
From August to December.
He just said January.
January, I'm sorry, yep, August through January.
what's the question?
Yes, what time period? And you just said it started in August and
It started
January.
Yes, yeah.
Now, I've asked Mike to get us that data on a chart, because I think a lot of us, when you see a linear chart, whether it's going like this or like this, it's a lot easier than sometimes looking at the numbers. So I asked him to put that together for us, and I'll have him send that out to us.
Mr. Chairman, I brought this up at exec, and I'll bring it up here. We're coming into budget season, we have to decide if we're gonna fund this or not fund this, whether it be through an article or through the ops budget. We were told at the beginning of this program that there would be 30,000 riders per year. What you're saying is we have 45 rides per day.
Correct.
That's not apples to apples.
It's
So
not.
I would like to know if there's data available on how many riders per day ride the bus.
We're gonna have them in our next meeting. We're gonna have a big discussion about this, because it is coming on, and one of the things is it comes right off the cherry sheet. Now, was that in our assessments on the recap? Did you have it in there?
There wasn't, so I'm not 100% sure how that's coming through.
Okay, because that comes right off the cherry sheet as an assessment. So, and I can't imagine what the number that was on there that,
I wondered about that too, because I didn't see it on
It's
the.
not showing up on that.
that's correct.
That
So
that
it-
was my question,
Does
Mr.
that mean we're gonna get back with a year?
So and that is certainly gonna affect our bottom line because of once we get that assessment on the cherry sheet. I mean, we're not gonna do it as an article, we're just basically gonna decide we're gonna do it, and either gonna take out the cherry sheet or they're not. So,
But it sounds like it's now down to $21 a ride.
Something very close
We
to
were
that.
25
Yeah, so
last
We're
month.
about 20 something.
So now
Yep.
we're down to 20.9, so $21
Yep.
a ride.
that's why, I mean, we're moving in the right direction, but we definitely have serious questions and concerns that need to be addressed, on transportation.
Long ways from 30,000.
There were 599
That's
I haven't given the numbers.
We're at 11,000.
Yeah.
Mark said 30.
Yeah,
A year.
We have,
yeah.
And right now, even with.
we're doing a run rate of about 12,000.
yeah, 11 and
Right,
change.
11 or 12,000.
Remember, we always knew
Rides versus riders.
we always
and
knew
that's-
the first year was
Well,
not gonna be 30,000.
You're only 6 months in.
But we're looking at the run rate. The run rate currently is about 13,000.
Yeah, but you're only 6 months in.
Correct.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna have a more extensive conversation, because we have to. Because at this point, it's, I don't wanna say fish or cut bait, but we're getting close to that point. So, and we have to have a very serious conversation, because either we're gonna stick with it, or we're gonna say it's not worth it. And obviously, there's a lot of players involved, and we have our opinion, selectmen have their opinion and everything else, so. But no, we're gonna have a very serious conversation about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Anybody else on transportation? The next thing I had on was the solar panel installation. At the last selectmen meeting, they had a presentation about solar panels on municipal buildings. They had a good presentation from Dave Consigli and I apologize. Who was with Dave on the solar panel? Who did the presentation?
I believe it was Scott Chris Foley.
No.
Scott happened to be there that night.
Yep. Anyway.
Select Solar.
Yes,
Solar Select.
whatever. So they're doing presentations on the benefits of having solar panels on municipal buildings. There also was conversation about how the windows are quickly closing on the ability to do these, and the returns are getting smaller and smaller. And the reason they came in to the selectmen to give them the update is because those windows are closing. So if we are gonna do it, it is something that is very time sensitive. Now,
Closing on rebates.
yes, and it's December 31st, it's, I forget what the word is, 2A, something 2A. What is it? SREC 2A, thank you. And it's December 31st, and that's actually an extension. So the selectmen can do what they can with their departments. There are 3 departments that do not come under their purview because they're elected, would be the sewer department, the parks department, and the school committee. Now, they obviously, highway, what did I say? Parks, I apologize, thank you. Highway. And those 3 buildings, the sewer building, the highway building, and the, up at the high school, are prime spots for, and of the other schools, they're prime spots for solar. Now, we can't force them to do anything, but also have a very strong opinion that they need to take a good look at it. They can't just say, oh, I looked at it and it doesn't work for me. I want these department heads to take a good look. I want them to get proposals. I want them to have a serious conversation with a solar company about the benefits and the cost savings. Because I know that I've talked to some of the people, and we're talking 60,000 a year savings for some buildings in electricity costs, 16,000. We're talking serious money, okay, over a 20-year period. And I'm not gonna have a department just say, oh yeah, we looked at it and it didn't work. That doesn't cut it with me, okay? Because this is big money. And I want that these departments to take a good, hard look at it. And if they come back and say we can't do it for X, Y, Z reason, that's fine. But you better have a good reason, because I'm not gonna have you say we're walking away from it because I don't feel like it, okay? That's not an answer that I know I'm gonna take. And if their budgets get adjusted because they're not gonna save money for electricity, then we do what we have to do. But I want everybody, this is the wave of the future, this is time sensitive, you're gonna do your work, okay? Yeah.
You say the rate of return is diminishing, and yet I see, for example, in East Main Street, where a private business is actually placing shelters over parking spaces on their parking lot,
Yep.
so they can put solar panels in over the parking spots. And I can't see a private business doing that if they have diminishing
No,
returns on it.
there's no question, Mike, and you don't see solar farms going up everywhere, you don't see them going on people's houses if it isn't a good deal. So the fact that we're not doing this all around town, or at least looking at it, if we see that it doesn't work, because it's gonna destroy a roof, please, of course, we're not gonna do that. But if we can do it sensibly and save the money for the town, we're gonna look at it.
You can't, Mr. Chairman, you can't compare residential and commercial.
There's different,
They're different, not only are there different rules, but there are different rules when you sell your house. I mean, there's all sorts of issues when.
yep, so, but
No,
there
the point
there still is
legitimately
significant
is don't
benefit.
walk away without doing
No, I
due
agree,
diligence.
totally
Yeah.
agree.
That's all.
So, anyway, like I said,
But
the-
who's gonna do the due diligence? I mean, do we have a company that we're trying to deal with, Rick?
Yes.
So we would want that department, like the school committee, to call them and say, come and make a presentation, blah, blah, blah?
that's correct. That's what I'm hoping, is I want
Need
those.
the name of the company.
They're all familiar with the company
Yes. They have had conversations with them. I know that each one of the departments has had conversations with Select Energy. And, you know, I don't know that everyone is taking it as seriously as obviously you can tell I'm taking it, okay? But I hope they're going to now, so.
Chairman, who would do the analysis for snow load and weight and all that? Would that be up to the department, or be up to Select Energy?
I would think that that's part of the presentation that Select Energy would give you is, you know, what the type of weight load that this stuff, and I'm not an expert in solar by any way, shape, or form, but they would obviously tell you what the burden is on the roof and whether we have the town engineer and that kind of stuff.
Then we'd confirm it.
Exactly, and if they say the roof can't support it, I mean, you did your due diligence, I'm okay with it. But, like I said, I just don't, I have a hard time leaving money on the table. So, does anyone else have any comments about it? All right. All right, future agenda items, obviously we had talked about.
Hold on. Chris, did you report on the library?
He's got
Oh,
library and
I'm very sorry, I didn't put it on there, but we talked earlier. Mike,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the subcommittee met with the library a couple weeks ago. Their expense, wage, salary budgets are pretty much in line. They're in compliance with the municipal authorization requirements and everything like that, appropriation requirement. They have about 4 open town meeting articles, and I was listening to Zach there, and of the 4, the oldest is October 2014 with a little bit left on it, which they're applying to improvements under the jurisdiction of the article. There's a October 2015 article, which they are getting quotes on for new checkout system, a patron counting system, and security elements. So they're working the articles. The third one is a fence article, which there's been a lot of discussion about, and what really happened was it was approved in October, fall of 2015. They went out in spring of 2016 to update the quotes. It fell outside the realm of the authorization, and it's been a problem for them ever since then. There was discussion at our subcommittee meeting with them, encouraging to try to work within the existing authorization under the article, as opposed to just going for a new fence, period. I think a lot of you received copies of pictures of the fence. There's a general feeling that it is serviceable. The Board of Trustees has met or is supposed to be meeting to discuss this subject, to decide how they're going to approach this, whether they do solve the problem within the realm of the existing town meeting, or whether they're going to come back to the town and ask for something. It's up to the board and the management of the library, so we're waiting to hear on that. And also an article, October 2016 on the server enclosure. And as your instructions were, do not spend money until you get the temperature test. They're working to get the louvered door in so they can shut the door and then run the tests, which they can't do now, but they're trying to get the louvered door in. On their proposed capital spending, their proposal, which they sent one to you shortly after our meeting, their version of where they envision the future. They have about 6 areas on that, and just quickly on FY18, they're looking at parking lot repaving and expansion. They did get planning board clearance on, I think, 7 or up to 7 new parking spaces along the lower driveway between them and Memorial Hall. And also to upgrade their HVAC control system. You know, it's one of these older systems that's still running under XP. And the hardware also needs to be updated. I believe they went over and looked at the upgrade at the police station. Is that right, Mike?
I think so.
And similar thing to what they need to do there too. So that's a FY18 projection. Getting into FY19, the children's room carpeting, again, they're trying to project out based on the 5-year plan. And they're looking at a tentative 3-year IT upgrade. And this is tentative because it's not yet known whether these expenditures are going to come under library budget or IT department. So they're laying it in there strictly as a contingency depending on how it's decided to go. And the last thing is archival shelving in the historical room. They had a grant that enabled that to be reviewed as far as protecting the archives. One of the recommendations was that they replace the wood shelving with archival metal shelving. This is only in one archival room. It's not the whole library. And that's all the way out, I think, FY19 or so. And the library does have a meeting scheduled with the Capital Planning Committee on May 10th. But I encourage you, Al, to look at the proposed capital plan that they had sent over to you in comparison with your plan. And it was also, the differences were mentioned in the minutes.
I updated our worksheet, but we still have to talk to them, because things like the fence, fundamental question. How did it change so dramatically in 6 months? Did you change the scope? You know, there's basic questions. On the IT room, they're doing exactly what they promised us. We put the money in there, and it's taken them months, which we expected. It may take a few more months for them to run the experiment before we spend 10 grand. So I'm very pleased that they're living up to their word. You know, I have no issues. The fence, they just gotta bring it, and we've talked at the subcommittee level, but I know the fundamental questions I'm gonna ask is, how'd the price change so dramatically in a few months?
Well, they're chasing the car down the street, that's what's happening here. Every time they go to get the fence spec, they go and get a quote, then the price goes up, and then it changes, so.
Yeah, but Michael, it can go up a couple percent, I would understand.
I know.
Going up 30% in 6 months seems like maybe there was scope change. Yeah, you went from a plain wood fence
What's
with
the fence?
now a nice plastic with a door, and yes, we just have to go through it.
We don't need to do it here.
No,
No.
po-
No, this is, you're getting into the
point,
micro one.
point well
Believe
taken.
me, there
We're
is
gonna,
no
do-
black and
we're,
white
we're
answer.
we're gonna have that in the capital subcommittee and that kind of stuff, so we'll see, yeah.
Just one quick question. You sent out all those lovely pictures of the fence and that school or whatever that's behind it.
Yes.
A lovely chain link fence.
Actually, I think it looked like hell, but.
Well,
Yeah.
it's better than what we had, so I think we're done and done.
Talked about that
Yeah.
ad nauseam.
I know. All right,
Don't send pictures.
no more? All right, we're done with the fence. You got anything else?
Also-
Sorry, I knew we had talked earlier, and I apologize, Mike. Jerry, and I thought you were keeping general government close to the vest, so that's why I didn't bring that one up.
I am gonna keep.
You
it-
ready now?
I am gonna keep it close.
All right, Jerry.
But there's also another option, they could take anything shortage on the fence and take it out of their regular budget too, at the end of the year, and just roll it in to finish the fence. We keep going back and forth too
Thought the
much.
fence was dead.
Yeah.
General government, short and sweet. Everything's in line. We're coming down to the end of the year in very, very good shape. A lot of nice things are happening in general government, but there is one area that I wanna make you aware of. And since we had an unfunded mandate from the state regarding early voting, we have incurred some additional wages with regard to the early voting requirement. So that area in the elections area may be running short. And the high number right now is somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000. That's the high number, but I actually think we have some places that we can fix it anyway. So that's why I'm keeping it close at hand
Yep.
right now.
No, that's great.
Because I think we have a plan, and my plan is to meet with them immediately following the elections, figure out what the details cost and what's involved, and bring that number in. And there's a good possibility, working with Zach, working with Mr. Valani, that we have some way to make up the difference. And I just want to let you know that, particularly since we just transferred 50,000 out of the reserve
Yep.
fund. And so, but there is a possibility, if everything were to go wrong, it could end up with a $9,000 or $10,000 short in the elections.
Okay,
And that's it.
all right, perfect.
We've got some other nice things are gonna happen. I'll report on them, when we do this year's budget. Some nice changes are gonna work out.
Jerry, quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is that now perpetual, this unfunded mandate? Is that gonna be?
I use that as a political, I didn't mean
No,
to
no,
charge
but what
that
I'm
up.
saying is,
The early voting issue?
Yeah.
It's for the presidential election.
Only
Yeah.
the presidential?
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is
right.
that,
I don't
Or
think
is it
whether-
every
with-
two? Every state?
I don't know, I just
Just
think it's
every four.
presidential.
Just the presidential?
okay, so it's not something we have to worry about.
We'll learn about it.
Yeah,
and
all right.
if we have to put 10,000 in for the next presidential.
And
certainly fund it.
we'll figure that
Yeah.
out.
But that, I think it caught her by, a little bit by surprise.
Yep.
And so she was a little bit.
And I hadn't heard any talk of that for any other election but the presidential, but we'll certainly, we'll
But
figure that out.
that's the only area we may have to
That's fine.
do a little homework.
All right, any other subcommittees?
Thank you.
Oh, yep, thank you, Jerry. Anybody else, subcommittee reports? Nope. All right, next one I wanted to talk about, if anyone had any other future agenda items they wanted to throw on, I had mentioned transportation will have on there. Is there anything else anybody had a particular fancy on that they wanted to have someone come in?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I would like to see the Milford Youth Center come in and talk about where they are with their return on investment of $5.5 million.
Sounds good.
And I would also like to have the senior center come in and explain to us how they're renting out space and not charging anybody.
How do you rent it if you don't charge?
Exactly,
Right.
my point.
Well, before we talk about it, let's have them in here and figure out what's going on. Thank
I really
you.
appreciate that, Mr.
Yep,
Chairman.
absolutely. Anybody else? All right, actually, that's it. So, last thing we have on the agenda is executive session, so I need a motion to go to executive session.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Roll call vote?
Purpose of.
For the purpose of discussing the possible purchase of the Milford Water Company. So I need a roll call?
Yes.
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 Oh.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
will we be coming out to
We,
adjourn
we will not be coming back to public session,
to open session?
open session.
Wait till he collects all the microphones.
Yep. Yep, sounds
There
good.
you go. Exactly.
All right, great work, guys, everybody, and thanks, and have a good night.